This video shows you how to set up and manage your billing and settlement codes in Transport Pro. When you get started with Transport Pro, your system comes pre-installed with a few billing and settlement codes. However, you'll likely find as time goes on that you need to add additional codes. First, let's define billing and settlement codes. Billing codes are anything that you need to bill a customer for: freight, detention, lumper fees, etc. A billing code may also be referred to as a line item or accessorial in the system. Settlement codes are anything that you need to pay out for, or in other words, what you need to pay your drivers and/or carriers for: line haul, fuel surcharge, detention, etc. You may also have scenarios with certain items where you need the system to automatically pay out a certain amount of what is billed. For example, you might have a company rule where you pay 100% of fuel surcharge to your owner-operators. You can set up this scenario so that the fuel surcharge automatically passes through to the owner-operator's settlement. This guide will show you how to set up and manage these codes and how to set up any of these pass-through scenarios if applicable to your business. Note, if you have these pass-through scenarios that you do need to set up, you'll need to set up the settlement code before you go and add the billing code. We recommend that you review the pre-installed billing and settlement codes before adding new ones, just to make sure that duplicate codes aren't getting added. Reviewing the pre-installed codes also gives you a good template for how the codes are set up. So first, let's start with our settlement codes. We're going to review the pre-installed codes by going to Administration, Manage Site Settings, Manage Settlement Codes, Search Settlement Codes. Then hit Search to bring up a list of all codes in the system. To review it in more detail, you can click on the ID. Now we're going to add a new settlement code to the system. To add a new code, go to Administration, Manage Site Settings, Manage Settlement Codes, Add Settlement Code. So here's the settlement code entry screen, and let's run through an explanation of fields. The yellow fields are required. Code. Enter a code for this settlement code. It can be whatever you want it to be, though we do recommend keeping it to 5 characters or less. Description internal. Give the code a description. This can be whatever you want it to be. This is an internal description, meaning it will live here on this record for your reference. Type. Select from the drop-down whether this code is used as a deduction, an earning, or a reimbursement. Method. This field will default to flat, and you'll likely use this option. The other option you have here is percentage. If you select percentage, then it calculates the percentage based on percentage of the line haul billing amount, default amount. If you typically associate this code with a certain amount, you can enter that default amount here, and then whenever you use this code, that default amount will drop in for you. You'll be able to change that at any time. Now, if this amount is always different whenever you use this code, you can simply enter 0, but a value here is required. Description external. This description is what shows up on the settlement or the settlement statement whenever you use this code. Oftentimes, it'll be the same as your internal description, but you can make it whatever you want. Item notes internal. This option is here in the case that you need to take a note about this particular item for internal informational purposes, and it will just live here on this record for you. Terminal restrictions. If you wish to lock down this settlement code so that it can only be used by users assigned to certain terminals, make that terminal selection here. Categorize item as. You don't have to select anything here, but you can if you want to. When the system creates the settlement statements that go out to the drivers and carriers, the system will automatically break out any earnings, deductions, reimbursements into their own categories on the template to display the items in an organized fashion. However, you may wish to place certain settlement codes into specific categories here. In short, think about how you want this item categorized on the settlement sheets and then make your selection here. If you don't see something you're looking for or you'd like to add an option here, please reach out to our technical team and they can add options. You'll want to contact them by emailing support@transportpro.net. Template year to date. When the system creates the settlement sheets, it will automatically show the year-to-date totals on the template. Assuming you want to include this item in those year-to-date totals whenever you use the code, then check this box. You'll most likely check this box on all of your codes, but perhaps you have a scenario or a couple of codes where you don't. Available for dispatch. If you want a dispatch user to be able to add this settlement item for a carrier or driver at the time of dispatch so that it gets passed through to the settlement, then check this box. If this box is checked, then it makes the settlement code available for the dispatch user via the manage link on the dispatch record. If this is a settlement code that an operations user does not need access to, or in other words, this code will only be used in the case of a one-time earning or deduction to be added at the time of processing settlements, or perhaps you're setting up this item to be used on a recurrence, then you wouldn't need to check this option. Note, you will notice that if you check this box, the load-based GL accounts below become available, and the default debit and credit account fields in this top half of the form become grayed out. This is because Transport Pro is an accrual-based accounting system. So later on, when the load gets marked ready to bill, the system needs to know which accounts on the ledger to hit in order to accrue. Lock at ready to bill. When this box is checked, a general settlements user cannot delete or edit this item. If this box is not checked, then when the item gets pushed over to settlements, a general settlements user can edit or alter the information for this code if needed. It really just comes down to how you want permissions set. Require cap on recurring. If you're going to use this settlement code for a recurring settlement item, and you wish to require a cap amount on that recurring item, then you'll check this box. This will make it so that when you go in and add a recurrence using this settlement item, the cap amount on that recurrence will become a yellow field, or in other words, become required. Exclude from load pay calculation. When using this code, if you don't want the amount to affect the commission calculation for an agent or terminal, then check this box. In other words, any deduction against a carrier that you do not wish to include in the gross profit or GP for calculating an agent's commission, check this box. A common example of this would be a ComCheck code. System use only. You only need to check this box if you wish to inactivate this code. Checking this box prevents this code from being available in the drop-down menus throughout the system. Default debit account and default credit account. So again, if you have checked the available for dispatch box, then these fields will be grayed out and you won't enter the GL accounts here, but rather below. If you don't check the available for dispatch box, then you'll enter the appropriate debit and credit accounts here. And you'll notice that the load-based GL accounts below become grayed out. This is because when a settlement code is used directly in settlements versus being added to the dispatch on a load, we don't accrue that expense as a liability. Only the items that hit at the time of billing are accrued. So when you do enter the GL codes here in the upper part of the form, oftentimes they'll be the same, but maybe not always. And this way, when you process a settlement or you void a settlement, it'll push and pull from the same account. Note, if you're unsure of which GL accounts to tag here, you'll need to consult with your accountant. All of the GL accounts point to the system's chart of accounts, which can be found and reviewed by going to Accounting, Chart of Accounts, Search Chart of Accounts. Review the GL accounts and then determine what needs to get tagged here. Your accountant can add or edit accounts on the chart of accounts here if needed. Also note that you must select an existing GL account, or in other words, an account from the chart of accounts here. Recall, anywhere in the system that you see a magnifying glass next to the field, that indicates that you have to select an existing record or an existing account, something that's already been added to the system. Then you'll click on it to insert the value when it comes up. Now let's take a look below at the load-based GL accounts. So again, if this item is available for dispatch, you'll need to tag the appropriate GL accounts here so that when the accrual process occurs, the system knows which accounts to debit and credit. If you're unsure of which accounts to tag here, please consult with your accountant. And recall, the GL accounts point to the system's chart of accounts. You'll also notice here that you can get pretty granular with the GL accounts if you want to. For example, perhaps you wish for certain GL accounts to get hit based on the type of equipment used on a load, as well as the type of dispatch, for example, company driver versus broker carrier. Now, by default, we give you a few equipment types here, but if you need additional options here, or you want us to change what the default equipment type is here, please let us know by emailing our support team at support@transportpro.net. Now, if you don't need to get quite this granular, then at least the default line must have a value in it. And this is the account on the ledger that will get hit regardless of the equipment type on the load. Now, if you are using QuickBooks or some other outside accounting system and not our financial package, you will still have to enter GL values here because the accounts will still get hit in the background when that accrual process occurs. Once everything looks correct here, save the record. Next, we're going to review our pre-installed billing codes. To review the billing codes, let's go to Administration, Manage Site Settings, Manage Billing Codes, Search Line Items. Then hit Search to bring up a list of all the codes in the system. If you want to review the code in more detail, you can click on the ID. Now we're going to add a new billing code to the system. It's a very similar process to setting up your settlement codes. So to add a new code, let's go to Administration, Manage Site Settings, Manage Billing Codes, Add Line Item. And recall, a billing code is also referred to as a line item or accessorial in the system. So here's the billing code entry screen, and let's run through an explanation of fields. Again, all the yellow fields are required. Code. Enter the code for this billing code. It can be whatever you want it to be, though we recommend keeping it to 5 characters or less. Give this billing code a title. This is the title that will be displayed in the drop-down menus throughout the system. Default rate. If you typically always associate this code with a default billing amount, you can enter that here, and then when you tag this code or line item, this default rate will auto-insert. You will be able to edit it at that point. However, if the amount is always different whenever you use this code, you can simply enter 0 here, but a value is required. Miscellaneous use only. If you wish to use this code only in the miscellaneous billing section of the system, then check this box. If you check this box, then this code will not be available to use on loads. The miscellaneous billing system is separate and is meant to be used in the case that you need to create an invoice for something that is not load related. For example, project management. System use only. You only need to check this box if you wish to inactivate this code. Checking this box prevents this code from being available in the drop-down menus throughout the system. Bill with freight. If this line item needs to be lumped together with the billing line haul amount by default whenever this code is used, then check this box. For example, let's say you're billing a customer $1,000 for line haul, and then you add this line item to that load, and let's say it's $200. The system would present the line haul amount to the customer on their invoice that the system generates as $1,200 instead of that $1,000. In other words, it shows the amount as a lump sum versus having it broken out. You have the option to set that here on the code itself. You also have this option on a per load basis that you can apply to any line item that you may need to use in this way. Description, default on invoice. Enter an external description for this billing code. In other words, this is the description that will show to the customer on their invoice when this code is used. Terminal restriction. If you only want certain terminals or certain users assigned to certain terminals to use this billing code, make the desired selection here. You'll also see a section here that says Other Pay Account Information. This section is rarely used, but it is here for some special or unique billing needs. For example, whenever you use this billing code on a load, perhaps you need the system to automatically set up a settlement or a payable for something like project management to be paid out to a specific agent or a settlement vendor, such as Pilot Car Services. In most cases, you'll probably leave this section blank, but a common example may be where you're billing the customer for Pilot Car Services, and then you also need to set up a payable or a settlement to pay out that Pilot Car service. This section is not used for setting up those automatic pass-throughs we talked about earlier, to pass through to carriers or owner ops or company drivers. We're going to cover those examples a little bit later in this video. If you are going to use this section though, we'll still run through an explanation of fields here. Settlement code. If you do wish to automatically pass through a settlement item to a payables account, Whenever this code is used, then you need to tag the settlement code here. So the settlement code needs to be set up first, then you can come back and tag it here. Pay account. This is the settlement account where the payable needs to go. So you would first need to make sure that the payable account, for example, that pilot car settlement vendor, is set up first, and then you can come here and tag it. Amount. Enter the amount that needs to be paid out, whether that be a flat rate or percentage of line haul. Method. Here you'll select that flat or percentage, and again, if you select percentage here, that is a percentage of the line haul billing amount. Line item notes for internal use only. If you need to make a note about this particular line item, you can enter it here. Again, it's internal, so this note will only live here on the billing code record for your internal informational purposes. Now, let's take a look at the load-based GL credit accounts and the global debit GL account. So recall that Transport Pro is an accrual-based accounting system. When a load is marked ready to bill, the accounting transactions occur. The transactions will hit the appropriate P&L accounts for the revenue and expense. They will also set up the receivable and liability on the balance sheet. You need to tell the system here which accounts to debit and credit. Recall the general ledger or GL accounts all point back to the system's chart of accounts, which again can be reviewed by going to Accounting, Chart of Accounts, Search Chart of Accounts. You or your accountant can add or edit the accounts as needed. If you're unsure of which accounts to tag here, please consult with your accountant. Again, just like on the settlement codes, you'll notice here that you can get pretty granular with the GL accounts if you want to. For example, perhaps you wish for a certain GL account to get hit based on the type of equipment used on a load, as well as the type of dispatch, for example, company driver versus broker carrier. And by default, we give you a few different equipment types here, but if you do need additional options added, or you want your default option to be different than what it is, please let us know by emailing support@transportpro.net. And if you do not need to get quite this granular, then at least the default line must have a value in it. And this is the account on the ledger that will get hit regardless of the equipment type on the load. If you are using QuickBooks or some other outside accounting system and not our financial package, you will still have to enter at least a default GL value here because the account is still going to get hit in the background. Same with the global debit GL account. You will need a value in there. Once everything looks correct, you can save the record. Of course, you'll be able to come back in here and make edits at any point in time. Lastly, let's look at how to set up those pass-through situations where you need the system to automatically pay out for what you bill. One of the most common examples of this is fuel surcharge. If you're an asset-based company working with owner-operators, then you probably have a company rule in place that says something to the effect of, we pay out 100% of fuel surcharge to our owner-operators. You would set this up on your fuel surcharge billing code. Now, it is important to note that with these pass-through scenarios, they can only be set up at a global level and not an individual level. So we don't have a way to say, well, John gets 100% of fuel surcharge, but Joe only gets 85%. The accessorials are different from line haul in this regard. You can set up these global pass-throughs on any codes. To set up a pass-through, you do need to be in edit mode on the desired billing code. So again, for this example, we're going to pull up our fuel surcharge billing code. So we're back on that edit screen, and you're going to see a section to enter a settlement code along with an amount and method under each GL credit account section. So first, determine which accounts should receive the pass-through. Is this going to go to our owner-operators, our company drivers, broker carriers? Does it go to all three? Then that tells you where you're going to set these pass-throughs up. Now in this example, we're just going to set up 100% of fuel surcharge to pass through to owner-operators only. So the first thing we'll do is tag our fuel surcharge settlement code here on the billing code. So you're tagging the settlement code on the billing code. Now again, this is one of those fields with the magnifying glass. So you'll need to select it and lock it in. If you start typing and nothing comes up, that's an indication to you that the settlement code for this has not been added to the system yet. If that's the case, you'll need to pause here, go and add the settlement code, then you can come back here and tag the settlement code here on the billing code. Once that settlement code is tagged, you'll enter the amount that you wish to pass through. In this example, we're going to enter 100. Do not enter a percentage or dollar sign. This is just a numeric value. And then lastly, we're going to select the method for this pass-through. In this example, it would be percentage. Flat is your other option. So now you can see we have set up that pass-through. And now whenever I bill a customer for fuel surcharge, 100% of that will automatically pass through to my owner-operators' settlements. Again, you can do the same thing for any code, for any type of account. And you'll see the option is also here for terminals. That completes the lesson on billing and settlement codes. If you get stuck or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team by emailing support@transportpro.net. Thanks for watching this video.